So it was always my life's journey to be a founder. And here's the other funny part is that I determined the concept of founder as being a unique discipline, meaning I never was trying to be a founder in an industry. Meaning I always have said, if somebody had said, go be a founder of a toilet paper company, cool, I could have done that. My love is the concept of founding and bringing new ideas and new energy to something. So that was really where my passion has lied. And so my whole career has been around becoming a fantastic founder, first of all.
Awesome. I had no idea. So that was like the Fairchild days and all that stuff, like the real origin of Silicon Valley. Yeah, if you don't know anything about it, you should go to Wikipedia and read up on the Fairchild stuff because it's an incredible story for people that are listening and don't really know about that. It's even like technically before my time. I know I'm older than I look, but I wasn't around for the Fairchild days. So yeah. Awesome. So okay. So you had this notebook full of all these crazy notes and all this cool stuff. So is that what inspired DocuSign, or help us understand how you go from there to what was in a nutshell, like how did you go from like that to starting like a really significant tech company?
So DocuSign was my second startup, not my first.
Okay.
And first startup was a very early e-commerce play from 96 to 01, which I ended up selling. One of the guys that worked for me at my first company, Tom Gonser, had gone off in the midst of all that and started his own company and approached me in 2003 and said, hey, my company had acquired some intellectual property of a failed company here in Seattle, and my board wants to sell it. I think there's some value. I enjoyed working with you. Would you be willing to take a look with me and see if there's some value here? So Tom and I so the original concept was Tom. So he approached me and then we sat down and looked at what his company had. And from that, I just sort of determined that there was a trade name, DocuSign, was in the pool of assets that he owned, or his company owned, and a patent that had been issued on electronic signing via the internet. And so together we put our heads together and came up with the original business plan of DocuSign. And so I then acquired the asset from his company so that we could spin it out into something separate. And then he quit and came to join. And so that was our co-founding team. And so they realized the value there was that we had an issued patent to start with. And ultimately, that became one of the key levers we used to fend off, wannabe competitors in the early years.
Interesting.
That's really cool. Was there a point where you thought, in order for us to grow bigger, you have to chase larger clients like enterprise? What did that like transition from early stage startups to enterprise look like?
So if you imagine DocuSign as a very horizontal tool, right? It can be used in pretty much any use case you can imagine. We had to be very thoughtful about not spreading ourselves too thin in terms of where we sold it. But in fact, we went to market selling to mid-market companies mostly. And once we understood the business model we were pursuing, which was this concept of a virtual digital envelope that could then be repurposed and sent around the world, then the scale was obviously in the bigger company, right? So you could go and sell to SMBs and mid-sized, but you really couldn't get a tremendous amount of scale there quickly. What happened though was that we were running up against, in the bigger companies, we were running up against the chief legal officer in every turn. Because even though there was federal law on the books that said that these were legal, there was no courtroom precedent. And if you imagine that a company adopting this at scale is basically saying, we trust that our most valuable documents, which are our primary sales contracts, are defensible, that if somebody were actually challenge them in court, that they would hold up. So it became a huge hurdle for us to get over the objection of the chief legal officer, because the business people all loved it, right? The business people were like, oh my God, this makes complete sense. We want to do this. Right. How quickly can we adopt it? Of course. And the CLOs were always the stopping point. So what I believe was one of my better entrepreneurial moves at the time was in desperation, frankly, because we were really having struggled to get over this. I went out and I hired a judge, a jury, and a prosecuting and defense attorney. And I found a case of prospective fraud, document fraud, that was tied to an insurance policy. And I had that entire group of people retry the case as if the document had been signed via DocuSign. And in the hopes that the outcome of that would be a favorable legal decision that in fact it was defensible in a courtroom. But I got
Wow.
greatly exceeded what I asked for, in that in the end, not only did the judge find in favor of the DocuSign document being defensible, he actually went farther and he wrote an opinion paper. And the opinion paper said, as a member of the judiciary, I have tried many of these cases. I've overseen many of the cases like this. This was far and away the most proof positive, easy case to try, because there was so much more evidence to support this signature than an ink signature or a fax signature. And armed with that, I now had something to take to the CLOs and get them to relax, basically, and get out of the way. Because really, CLOs are never going to help you. They're always ever going to stand in your way. And it was just like, time to sit down, guys.
Wait,
Wow,
I
that's
want to
an
make sure.
incredible story. Wow.
So how did you I'm curious to understand the execution on this. Like, you found a judge? Like, how did you go about like recruiting these people? Did you put an ad like on Craigslist? Like, it's fascinating.